efforts are underway to rescue people stuck in the rubble from buildings that collapsed following the massive earthquake in Turkey. The death toll in Turkey and Syria has continued to climb, crossing a grim mark of 11,000. The latest mayhem is once again a bitter reminder to the world community that nature is supreme. In the meantime, many countries have extended support for emergency response and recovery. Good evening, I am Praram Madhal. Let's begin with the main stories. Death toll following massive earthquakes in Turkey and Syria crosses grim 11,000 mark. Government of Nepal to send 2 aircrafts with relief materials as foreign ministers of the two countries hold parleys. Health equipment worth 1 billion rupees procured during COVID pandemic remain unused, citing lack of human resource and infrastructure, while government continues to remain indifferent. Government prepares to reduce budget through semi-annual review. Revenue collection and development expenditure dismal. Provinces and local levels demand adequate allocation. And 3 more Nepali boxers qualify for Women's World Boxing Championship. Army's Chandrakala and APF Saraswati and Sangeeta selected. The government has made preparations to send a medical team and emergency aid to Turkey that has been gripped by massive earthquakes. The 10th meeting of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, held at the office of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, made the decision to provide aid to those affected by the massive earthquakes in Turkey. The relief materials will be dispatched by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the coordination of the Relief Aid Agency. Preparations are underway to send emergency relief materials, including warm clothes, medicines and generators among other items, in 2 flights. During the meeting, Prime Minister Pushpa Dahal said Nepal and Turkey had maintained a friendly relation and that the government of Nepal must do all it can to support Turkey. Prime Minister and CPN Maoist Center Chairperson Pushpa Dahal has met with CPN UML Chairperson KP Sharma Oli. The two leaders have agreed to hold a meeting of the high-level political mechanism tomorrow. Prime Minister Pushpa Dahal had reached the residence of UML Chair Oli in Palkot earlier this morning. The meeting is understood to have delved into topics including appointment of ministers at 5 vacant ministerial portfolios and the presidential election. Prime Minister Dahal is shouldering the responsibility of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Education and Labour after Rashtriya Swatantra Party exited from the government. Prior to the addition of these portfolios, Premier Dahal was already leading the Ministry of Forest alongside Youth and Sports as well. UML Chair Oli had reached the official residence of the Prime Minister in Balotar yesterday to talk about the portfolios. Speaking after today's meeting, Prime Minister Dahal said that additional talks are to be held in tomorrow's meeting of the high-level political mechanism. Meanwhile, the two leaders have yet to reach a consensus on presidential election. UML has remained firm in its claim of presidential post based on previous agreement, while Maoist Center has been voicing for national consensus regarding the designation. The government procured a large quantity of health equipment and devices, while a huge amount of such equipment and devices were received in grants and aid when the country was gripped by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, this equipment procured at huge expenses have not been utilized. Many of these equipment have yet to be used. The government has not operated these equipment and devices, citing issues of infrastructure and skilled human resource. The government 6 months ago had provided refill booster for oxygen cylinders to Gorkha Hospital, which is in Gorkha. However, the equipment has not come into operation as of yet. The equipment used in the intensive care units, which had arrived during the first wave of coronavirus, have not been utilized as well. The Pastor District Hospital, that had received 20 million rupees from the COVID Response Fund, had purchased equipment and devices to bring the 10-bed capacity ICU and 4 ventilators into operation. However, initiatives have yet to be taken for their operation. These are just representative cases. Majority of the health institutions that had received new equipment and devices during the pandemic have yet to make use of those appliances. As per the government projection, health equipment worth 1 billion rupees have been procured in the country since the COVID pandemic began. 38 out of 133 hemodialysis machines provided to hospitals since the first wave of the pandemic have not been used. Likewise, only 3 out of 13 portable X-ray machines have been brought to use. Out of 317 ventilators provided to various health institutions, 122 have been left unused. The government has remained indifferent towards a large number of health equipment being left deserted. Experts have attributed this issue to the purchase of health equipment without identifying the requirement. They say that the state resources have been abused by leaving these equipment unutilized. There is a lack of trend of conducting research for identification of required equipment. The government, meanwhile, has failed to monitor the utilization of health equipment procured hastily during the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister and CPN Maoist Center Chairperson Pushpa Dahal and CPN UML Chairperson KP Sharma Oli have been expediting their parleys to revive the synergy of the ruling coalition formed back in December. Now, despite the failure in reaching a consensus, the two leaders have increased their meetings. However, their respective parties seem unaware about the topics of discussions between the chair duo. Prime Minister Dahal and CPN UML Chair Oli have held 12 one-on-one parleys since December 26. Despite their repeated conversations, the government is yet to gain a full shape, while a consensus on the presidential candidate has remained elusive. In addition to that, the ruling coalition remains divided on several topics. One of the major entity of the alliance, Rashtriya Swatantra Party, has quit the government. With Maoist Center firm in their voice for national consensus, UML Chair Oli is in no mood for the same. Despite such polarization, Dahal and Oli have been holding regular talks without discussions inside their respective parties. UML members have said that discussions have been held inside the parties only after a consensus among the party leaders. Previously, when the erstwhile Nepal Communist Party had almost a two-third majority, Dahal and Oli used to meet regularly, but such regular parleys did not avoid the split of the entity. The leaders seem to have gone the same route with regular meetings without concrete agreements, which the Maoist Center members say could invite internal conflict. Senior political leaders have been preferring individuals who they can influence as the candidate for president. Such a practice has not only impacted the political culture and practice, but has also weakened democracy. There may be situations where the party leaders may have to take a decision and then seek consensus within their parties. However, an individual being assigned the responsibility of taking all decisions only weakens the party's internal democratic practice, which has a wider impact on national politics and democracy. It is now time for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
Before we ask today's question, let us take a look at the result from yesterday's poll. Yesterday we asked, what do you term the government assurance to increase health science academies without adequate studies? 23% were for A, effort to win confidence of everyone, 47% were for B, commercial interest, and 30% were for C, baseless assurances. And here is our today's question. Why have expensive health equipment remained unused? Your options are A, procurement without plans, B, lack of human resource, and C, equipment not needed. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B, or C, and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Now, Samantha Power, administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, has said that the entity's investments will help Nepal cement its democratic gains and usher in greater prosperity and resilience for the Nepali people by strengthening public financial management, independent civil society and media, democratic processes and institutions, rule of law, and private sector development. Clarifying there was no geopolitical interest hidden behind America's aid and support for Nepal, Administrator Power has also added that the USAID will also continue to help Nepal combat human trafficking and its initiatives in curbing the impact of climate change.
Nepali people in the driver's seat and us in a support role and a partnership role, but we need to embed a consideration of these new climate dynamics into, for example, the government's agricultural reform agenda. We at USAID need to think about climate change across all sectors. We need to think about what young people are learning in our education programming. We need to think about digital technology and our work on IT in terms of also some of the early warning programming that USAID can offer through NASA and NOAA and other scientific agencies, which can empower the farmer to know what these changing seasonal weather patterns are going to mean. We can equip farmers through our Feed the Future program, with soil mapping and understanding of how to apply fertilizer, especially with fertilizer prices as high as they have been this last year. So, you know, I think the detailed discussions about what the partnership, about how climate is embedded into virtually all aspects of our partnership will be the conversations that our mission and our embassy will be having in the days ahead with the Prime Minister's relatively new team. But I think we had broad agreement that, you know, unless we can build in resilience across our programming and bring in attention to and consideration of climate effects into all of our programming, some of the really important development gains that Nepal has made, you know, will be at risk.
Administrator Power added that the new USAID investments in Nepal build on more than 6 decades of USAID partnerships with the government and people of Nepal, the private sector and others to support Nepal's goals and aspirations. The government has not been able to generate expected revenues while expenses have exceeded initial estimations. As a result, the government is doing legworks to reduce budget through semi-annual review by mid-February. National Planning Commission and the Ministry of Finance, meanwhile, are also preparing to increase new budget by 10% as opposed to the 20% increase that is normally done. The government had issued a budget of 1,793 billion rupees for the ongoing fiscal year. However, revenue collection and development expenditure have both remained dismal. Current expenses have exceeded revenue collection by 144 billion rupees. The revenue generated is also 95 billion rupees less compared to the same period last year. Government debt has increased by 24 billion rupees due to increase in the value of dollars and interest rate in domestic market. Likewise, as a result of market inflation, the government had to add 24 billion rupees for the procurement of chemical fertilizers. The government has last year had received 13 billion rupees in grants, has just received 5,990 million rupees this time. This has compelled the government to revise and reduce its budget as well. As the government has also begun preparations for next year's budget, National Planning Commission has determined budget sources for the coming fiscal year. Provincial governments and local levels have been directed to propose for their programs. Experts have recommended government to reduce their administrative costs and to prioritize productive sectors to avoid economic crisis. In our Public Voice segment, today we have asked in several provinces what type of programs should the government allocate budget for the local levels. Let us now take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
स्वास्थ्य रोजगारीको शीर्षकहरुमा चाहिँ त्यसमा चाहिँ बजेट विनियोजन गरेर बालबालिकाको क्षेत्रमा
गरिबी उसमा रहेका व्यक्तिहरू पीडित हुनुहुन्छ क्यान्सर र के मृगौला समस्याले हो त्यो स्थानीय तहले पनि आफ्नो एरिया भित्रका त्यस्ता व्यक्तिहरूलाई केही आर्थिक सहयोग गरेर चाहिँ उहाँहरूलाई केही राहत चाहिँ दिनुपर्छ।
खानेपानी र स्वास्थ्य सडक र शिक्षामा चाहिँ फोकस गरोस्।
लैङ्गिक हिंसाको उसमा चाहिँ मुद्दामा चाहिँ बजेट विनियोजन गर्नुपर्छ।
घरेलु हिंसालाई चाहिँ एकदम प्राथमिकता दिन आवश्यक देखेको छु।
सिंचाइको लागि पनि हामीलाई सौतो प्रयास गर्नु पर्यो।
किसान र मलको लागि राम्रो बजेट हुनु पर्यो।
युवाहरुमा लगानी गरिदिए भए जुन अहिले युवाहरु धेरै विदेश प्लानिङ भइरहेको छ त्यो चाहिँ अलिकति संविधान हुन्थ्यो।
बाढी प्रकोपलाई चाहिँ कन्ट्रोल गर्ने,
स्वास्थ्य र शिक्षालाई प्राथमिकता दिँदा राम्रो हुन्छ।
Time now for the international update. Death toll from the earthquake that struck Turkey and Syria on Monday has risen to over 11,000. At least 8,574 have died in Turkey, the country's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said. Meanwhile, at least 2,530 have died in Syria. Yesterday, Erdogan had announced a 3-month state of emergency in 10 provinces that have been the hardest hit. More than 12,000 Turkish search and rescue personnel are working in affected areas along with 9,000 troops. More than 70 countries have offered rescue teams and other aid as well.
Sports News.
Saraswati Rana Magar of the Armed Police Force has been selected for the Women's World Boxing Championship. Trisha Gazebu of Jhapa, who had won a bronze at the Asian Under-22 Boxing Championship, lost to Saraswati at the All Nepal Boxing Selection Tournament. In the final of the selection held at the boxing ring in Sadhobato, Saraswati secured a 5-0 win over Trisha. Prior to this, Trisha had secured a third spot in the 75 kg category of the Asian Youth Boxing Tournament held in Thailand. And despite progressing to the final of the selection, international medal holder Trisha failed to secure her spot in the World Championship. Meanwhile, Chandrakala Thapa of Trivan Army Club has qualified for the 57 kg category as she saw off Sushmita Rai of Jhapa 5-0 as well. Sangeeta Sunar of APF has been selected for the 60 kg category after defeating Niru Gurung of Army. Prior to this, Minu Gurung of Army and Anjali Tili of Boxmandu had made it through from the qualification round yesterday. Minu and Anjali will participate in the 52 kg category. The final match for the 50 kg category is slated for tomorrow, where Ashmita Duwal will take on Diwana Sharma. The Women's World Boxing Championship will be held in New Delhi, India from March 13 to 27. Nepal will contest in the 75, 60, 57, 50 and 48 kg categories. Sushma Tamang will compete in the 48 kg category. The Boxing Association granted direct qualification for Sushma, who had won a silver at the Asian Under-22 Boxing Tournament. Up next is the weather update. That is all for the moment. Up next is the news in Nepali. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye for now.